Marcus Thompson loved the sound of his motorcycle engine. The deep roar made him feel powerful and free. He was 28 years old and worked at a car repair shop in Manchester. Every weekend he rode his big black Harley-Davidson motorcycle with his friends. They called themselves the Iron Eagles Motorcycle Club. This Saturday morning was special. Marcus and his 5 best friends were riding to London. It was going to be their first trip to the capital city together. They had been planning this trip for 3 months. Marcus was the most excited of all his friends. He had never been to London before. The ride from Manchester to London took 4 hours. Marcus enjoyed every minute of it. The wind hit his face as he rode down the highway. His leather jacket kept him warm against the cool morning air. Behind him, his friends followed on their own motorcycles. They made a loud group as they traveled south. Marcus had always been the bold one in his group. At school, he was the kid who would climb the highest tree. At work, he was the one who would try to fix the most difficult cars. His friends knew that Marcus never backed down from a challenge. Sometimes this got him into trouble, but most of the time it just made life more exciting. When they reached London, Marcus felt amazed by the big city. The buildings were so tall and old. There were people everywhere walking fast and talking on their phones. The streets were busy with red buses and black taxis. Everything looked different from his small town in Manchester. The group rode through the city streets looking for a place to park their motorcycles. Marcus had researched the best places to visit in London. At the top of his list was Buckingham Palace. He had seen pictures of it on television and in books, but he wanted to see it with his own eyes. "There it is," shouted Marcus to his friends as they turned a corner. Buckingham Palace stood in front of them like something from a fairy tale. The building was huge and beautiful. It had many windows and columns. The walls were made of gray stone that looked very old and important. Marcus found a parking spot near the palace gates. He turned off his motorcycle engine and took off his helmet. His dark hair was messy from the ride. He stretched his arms and looked around. There were many other tourists taking pictures and walking around. Some were families with children. Others were couples holding hands. But what caught Marcus's attention most was not the palace building. It was the guard standing at the gate. The man wore a bright red jacket with shiny gold buttons. On his head was a huge black hat made of fur. It was so tall that it made the guard look 7 feet high. In his hands, he held a long rifle. Marcus stared at the guard. The man stood perfectly still. He did not move his eyes. He did not move his hands. He did not even seem to breathe. It was like looking at a statue of a soldier instead of a real person. "Look at that guy," Marcus said to his friend Tommy, who was parking his motorcycle next to him. "He looks like a toy soldier." Tommy looked at the guard and laughed. "Yeah, he does. I bet he has to stand there all day without moving." Marcus walked closer to get a better look. The guard was young, maybe in his 20s. He had a serious face and blue eyes that stared straight ahead. Marcus wondered what the guard was thinking about. Was he bored? Was he tired? Did his feet hurt from standing so long? The other tourists seemed to know something about these guards. Marcus heard a woman with an American accent explaining to her children that these were the famous royal guards. She said they protected the queen and the palace. She told her kids that the guards were not allowed to move or talk while they were on duty. Marcus found this very interesting. He had heard stories about these guards before. People said they would not move even if someone tried to make them laugh. They would not move even if it started to rain. They were trained to be like robots. "Hey guys, come here," Marcus called to his friends. The Iron Eagles gathered around him. "Do you see that guard over there?" His friends looked at the red-coated soldier standing by the gate. "What about him?" asked Jake, the youngest member of their group. "I heard these guys never move. No matter what happens, they just stand there like statues," Marcus explained. "That's crazy," said Dave, shaking his head. "How can someone stand so still for so long?" Marcus smiled. He was getting an idea. The same kind of idea that had gotten him into trouble many times before. But it also made life fun and exciting. "I wonder if that's really true," Marcus said slowly. "I wonder if there's anything that could make him move." His friends could see that look in Marcus's eyes. It was the same look he had when he decided to ride his motorcycle faster than he should. It was the same look he had when he wanted to prove he was braver than everyone else. "Marcus, what are you thinking?" asked Tommy. "I'm just curious, that's all," Marcus replied. But his friends knew him too well. They knew that when Marcus got curious, things usually got interesting. Marcus pulled out his phone and took a picture of the guard. Then he walked a little closer and took another picture. The guard did not move at all. He did not even look at Marcus. There were other tourists taking pictures too. Some stood next to the guard and smiled for their cameras. The guard ignored all of them. It was like they were not even there. Marcus was impressed. He had never seen anyone with such strong self-control. In his world, if someone ignored him, it usually meant they were angry or trying to be rude. But this guard seemed different. He was doing his job, and his job was to stand still and look serious. But Marcus was also curious. How still could this guard really stay? What would it take to get some kind of reaction from him? Marcus loved a good challenge, and this was starting to look like the most interesting challenge he had found in a long time. The other members of the Iron Eagles were busy looking at the palace and taking pictures. They were excited to be in London and wanted to see everything. But Marcus could not take his eyes off the guard. This was going to be an interesting day in London. Marcus could feel it. After taking several pictures, Marcus walked back to his friends. They were standing near their motorcycles looking at a map of London. They wanted to plan their day and see all the famous places. "So where should we go first?" asked Tommy, holding the map. "Big Ben is not far from here," said Jake, pointing at the map. "And we should see Tower Bridge too," added Dave. But Marcus was not listening to their conversation. His eyes kept going back to the Royal Guard. The man had not moved even 1 inch since Marcus first saw him. It was amazing and strange at the same time. "Marcus, are you okay?" asked his friend Steve. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine," Marcus replied. "I'm just watching that guard over there." His friends turned to look at the guard again. "He really doesn't move, does he?" said Tommy. "I heard that they trained for months to be able to do that," said Jake. "My cousin was in the army, and he told me these royal guards are some of the best soldiers in the world." Marcus nodded, but he was thinking about something else. He was wondering if the stories about these guards were really true. Could nothing make them move? Nothing at all? "You know what?" Marcus said with a grin. "I bet I could make him move." His friends looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean?" asked Steve. "I mean, he's just a regular guy, right? He has to have some kind of limit. Maybe if I do something funny enough, he'll at least smile." Dave shook his head. "Marcus, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "I'm not going to hurt him or anything. I just want to see if he's really as tough as people say." Tommy laughed. "You always want to test everything, don't you?" "That's what makes life interesting," Marcus replied. The idea was growing stronger in Marcus's mind. He loved challenges, and this seemed like the ultimate test. If he could make one of the famous royal guards break his concentration, it would be the best story ever. He could tell this story for years. "Come on, guys," Marcus said. "Don't you want to know if it's really possible?" His friends looked at each other. They knew Marcus well enough to know that once he got an idea in his head, it was hard to stop him. "What exactly are you planning to do?" asked Jake. "Nothing crazy. Just some harmless fun. Maybe I'll tell him a joke or make a funny face. What's the worst that could happen?" Steve was not convinced. "Marcus, these guys are working. We're in a foreign country. Maybe we should just leave them alone." But Marcus was already walking back toward the guard. His friends followed him, curious but worried about what he might do. Marcus started simple. He stood about 10 feet away from the guard and waved at him. "Hello there," Marcus said in a loud, friendly voice. The guard did not respond. He continued staring straight ahead as if Marcus was not there. Several other tourists noticed what Marcus was doing. Some of them smiled and took pictures. They thought it was funny to see someone trying to talk to the silent guard. "Nice hat," Marcus called out. "Is it heavy?" Still no response. Marcus moved a little closer. "I like your red jacket. Very stylish." The guard remained perfectly still. By now a small crowd of tourists had gathered to watch. They found it entertaining to see this young man from Manchester trying to get a reaction from the Royal Guard. "He's not very talkative, is he?" Marcus said to the crowd. Some people laughed. Marcus was enjoying the attention. He had always liked being the center of attention. And now he had an audience of tourists from all over the world. "Maybe he doesn't speak English," Marcus said loudly. "Hola, bonjour. Guten Tag." The crowd laughed again. Marcus felt encouraged. He decided to try a different approach. Marcus stood right in front of the guard and started making funny faces. He crossed his eyes and stuck out his tongue. He made monkey noises and silly gestures with his hands. The tourists were taking lots of pictures and videos now. Children in the crowd were giggling. Their parents were smiling and shaking their heads, but the guard did not react at all. His face remained serious and professional. His eyes continued to stare straight ahead, looking right through Marcus as if he was invisible. Marcus was impressed but also frustrated. He had never met anyone who could ignore him so completely. "Wow, this guy is good," Marcus said to Tommy, who had come closer to watch. "Maybe you should stop now," Tommy suggested. "You proved your point. He really doesn't move." But Marcus was not ready to give up. He was having too much fun, and the crowd was enjoying the show. "Let me try one more thing," Marcus said. He went back to the guard and started telling him a story. He spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "You know, I rode my motorcycle all the way from Manchester to see you today. It took 4 hours. My bike is really loud. Want to hear how loud it is?" Without waiting for an answer that he knew would not come, Marcus walked over to his Harley-Davidson. He started the engine and revved it several times. The sound was very loud and echoed off the palace walls. "Vroom! Vroom! Vroom!" The noise made some tourists cover their ears. But the guard did not even blink. Marcus turned off the engine and walked back to the guard. "That didn't impress you either, huh?" Marcus said. "You really are tough." The crowd was getting bigger now. More and more tourists were stopping to watch the show. Some were taking videos with their phones. Marcus could see himself becoming famous on social media. His friends from the Iron Eagles were watching too, but they looked more worried than entertained. "Marcus," called Steve. Maybe that's enough for now. But Marcus was feeling confident. The crowd was enjoying his performance and he was having fun. He felt like he was putting on a show for everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced to the crowd, "we have here one of London's famous royal guards. As you can see, nothing can make him move. He is like a statue made of stone." The crowd clapped and laughed. Marcus took a bow like he was a performer on stage. "But wait," Marcus continued. "There's more." He walked even closer to the guard. Now he was standing just 3 feet away from him. "I bet this guard has some amazing stories," Marcus said to the crowd. "Too bad he can't tell us any of them." Marcus was getting bolder with each passing minute. The positive reaction from the crowd made him feel like he could do anything. He forgot that he was in a foreign country. He forgot that this was not just entertainment. He forgot that the man in the red coat was a real soldier doing a real job. All Marcus could think about was the challenge and the fun he was having. Marcus was getting more excited by the minute. The crowd around him was growing larger, and people were laughing at his jokes. He felt like a comedian performing on stage. But he was not satisfied yet. The guard still had not moved or shown any sign that he noticed Marcus at all. "This guy is incredible," Marcus said to the crowd. "I've been talking to him for 10 minutes and he hasn't even blinked." A woman in the crowd called out, "Try dancing." Marcus grinned. "Great idea." He started doing a silly dance in front of the guard. He moved his arms like a robot and made funny expressions with his face. The tourists loved it. Children were clapping their hands and adults were taking videos, but the royal guard remained as still as a statue. Marcus stopped dancing and put his hands on his hips. He was breathing a little hard from all the movement. "Okay, Mr. Guard," Marcus said, speaking directly to the soldier. "You win this round, but I'm not giving up yet." He walked back to his friends who were still standing near their motorcycles. "This is crazy," said Jake. "How does he do it?" "I don't know," replied Marcus, "but it's amazing. I've never seen anything like it." Tommy looked concerned. "Marcus, you're drawing a lot of attention. Maybe we should go see the other sites now." But Marcus was not ready to leave. He was enjoying himself too much. Plus, he still had not achieved his goal of making the guard react. "Just give me a few more minutes," Marcus said. "I want to try something else." He walked back toward the guard, but this time he noticed something interesting. There were other guards stationed around the palace area. Marcus counted at least 3 more red-coated soldiers standing at different positions. They were all standing perfectly still, just like the first guard. This gave Marcus a new idea. "Hey everyone," Marcus called to the crowd. "There are more guards over there. Let's go say hello to them too." Marcus led the group of tourists to the next guard position. This guard looked older than the first one. He had a mustache and looked very serious. "Good afternoon, sir," Marcus said loudly to the second guard. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" No response. Marcus turned to the crowd. "This one doesn't talk either. What do you think is wrong with them?" The tourists laughed again. Marcus was feeling very confident now. He had a big audience, and they were enjoying his show. He decided to get creative. He stood between two guards and pretended to be a guard himself. Marcus straightened his back, held his arms stiff at his sides, and stared straight ahead with a serious expression. "Look at me," Marcus called to the crowd. "I'm a royal guard too." But after about 30 seconds, Marcus started making funny faces and moving around. The crowd laughed even harder. "It's harder than it looks," Marcus announced. A man in the crowd shouted, "Try talking like them." Marcus put on a fake British accent and said in a deep voice, "I am protecting the Queen. No one shall pass." The crowd was really enjoying the show now. There were at least 50 people watching Marcus perform, but his friends were getting more worried. They could see that Marcus was getting carried away with all the attention. "Marcus," Steve called out, "come here for a minute." Marcus walked over to his friends, still smiling from all the laughter. "What's up?" Marcus asked. "Don't you think you've had enough fun?" Steve asked. "These guys are working. We're kind of making a joke out of their job." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "Come on, it's all harmless fun. Look how much everyone is enjoying it. Besides, these guards are probably bored out of their minds. I'm giving them some entertainment for once." Dave shook his head. "I don't think they see it that way. How would you know?" Marcus replied. "They haven't said anything." "That's exactly the point," Tommy said. "They can't say anything. They're stuck there and they have to put up with whatever we do." But Marcus was not listening to his friend's concerns. He was too excited by the crowd's reaction and the challenge of trying to break the guard's concentration. "Watch this," Marcus said, and he walked back to the first guard. This time Marcus stood very close to the guard. He was now only about 2 feet away from the soldier. "I bet you wish you could tell me to go away," Marcus said to the guard. "But you can't, can you?" Marcus started walking in circles around the guard, talking the whole time. "This must be the most boring job in the world," Marcus said loudly. "Standing here all day, every day, not allowed to move or talk. I would go crazy." The crowd was still watching and taking pictures, but some people were starting to look uncomfortable. A few tourists walked away, seeming to think that Marcus was going too far. But Marcus did not notice the people leaving. He only saw the people who were still watching and laughing. He decided to try something even bolder. Marcus stood directly in front of the guard, just inches away from his face. "Hello in there," Marcus said, looking straight into the guard's eyes. "Anybody home?" For just a moment, Marcus thought he saw something change in the guard's expression. It was very small, but Marcus thought the guard's jaw tightened slightly. This excited Marcus even more. Maybe he was finally getting through to the soldier. "Did you see that?" Marcus called to the crowd. "I think he almost moved." The guard's name was Corporal James Mitchell. He had been standing at his post for 45 minutes. He was trained to ignore distractions, and he was very good at his job. But this young man with the motorcycle was becoming more than just a distraction. Corporal Mitchell could see everything that was happening around him, even though he appeared to be staring straight ahead. He had noticed the motorcycles arrive. He had seen the group of friends talking and planning their day, and he had been aware of Marcus from the moment he first approached. At first, it had been easy to ignore. Tourists often tried to get reactions from the guards. Corporal Mitchell had dealt with this many times before. Usually people got bored after a few minutes and moved on, but this tourist was different. He was not giving up, and he was getting closer and closer. Corporal Mitchell was starting to feel uncomfortable. The young man was now standing so close that he could smell his leather jacket. This was closer than most tourists ever came. But Corporal Mitchell was a professional soldier. He had a job to do, and he would do it properly. No matter what this tourist did, he would not break his concentration. However, there were limits to what he would allow. And this tourist was getting very close to those limits. Marcus, unaware of the guard's growing discomfort, was planning his next move. He was having so much fun that he did not want the game to end, and he was determined to get some kind of reaction before he gave up. The crowd was still watching, though it was smaller now than before. Some people were taking videos, and Marcus imagined himself becoming famous on the internet. "Okay, Mr. Guard," Marcus said, stepping even closer. "Let's see what you're really made of." Marcus was running out of ideas, but he was not ready to give up. He had been trying to get a reaction from the Royal Guard for over 20 minutes now. The crowd was still there, but some people had started to lose interest and walk away. Marcus needed to do something bigger, something that would definitely get the guard's attention. He looked at the soldier standing perfectly still in front of him. The guard held his rifle in both hands, keeping it straight and steady. That rifle gave Marcus an idea. "I bet that gun isn't even real," Marcus said loudly to the crowd. "It's probably just a fake one for show." Several people in the crowd looked uncomfortable when Marcus mentioned the rifle. A woman pulled her children closer to her, but Marcus was focused on his performance. He was determined to prove his point about the guard not being able to react to anything. "Think about it," Marcus continued, speaking to the tourists around him. "If it was a real gun, they wouldn't let tourists get this close, right?" Marcus stepped even closer to Corporal Mitchell. Now he was standing so close that he could have reached out and touched the guard's uniform. Corporal Mitchell was becoming very concerned. This tourist had crossed several boundaries already. He was standing far too close and talking about the rifle, but the worst part was that he kept getting closer. Marcus looked at the rifle in the guard's hands. It was black and looked very official, but Marcus convinced himself that it had to be fake. After all, what government would give real weapons to guards who were just there for tourists to look at? "Let me get a closer look at this," Marcus said. Before anyone could react, Marcus reached out his hand toward the rifle. The moment Marcus's fingers touched the weapon, everything changed. Corporal Mitchell had been trained for exactly this situation. When someone tries to touch a guard's weapon, it is considered a serious security threat. The guard must respond immediately and forcefully. In one quick motion, Corporal Mitchell brought his rifle up to his chest in a defensive position. The movement was so fast and smooth that it looked like a machine had suddenly come to life. "Stand back from the Queen's Guard," Corporal Mitchell shouted in a voice that seemed to come from deep inside his chest. The sound was incredible. After more than 20 minutes of complete silence, the guard's voice was like thunder. It was loud, clear, and full of authority. The words echoed off the palace walls and seemed to shake the ground. Marcus jumped backward so fast that he almost fell over. His face went white with shock. His mouth fell open and his eyes grew wide. The entire crowd of tourists stepped back at the same time. Children started crying. Adults looked around nervously, not sure what was happening. Corporal Mitchell was no longer standing still like a statue. His blue eyes were now focused directly on Marcus. The guard's face was serious and alert. He held his rifle in a ready position and watched Marcus's every move. Marcus's heart was beating so fast that he could hear it in his ears. He had never been so surprised in his entire life. One second he was looking at what seemed like a toy soldier, and the next second he was facing a real military man who was clearly prepared to defend himself. I was just... Marcus tried to speak, but the words would not come out properly. "Step back," Corporal Mitchell commanded again. Marcus quickly moved several steps away from the guard. His hands were shaking and his legs felt weak. The other tourists were also moving backward, creating a large empty space around the guard. People were whispering to each other and pointing. Some were still taking pictures, but now they looked scared instead of entertained. Marcus's friends from the Iron Eagles rushed over to him. "Marcus, are you okay?" Tommy asked. "What did you do?" Steve demanded. "I just touched his gun," Marcus said quietly. "I didn't think it was real." "You touched his gun?" Jake said with disbelief. "Are you crazy?" Marcus looked back at Corporal Mitchell. The guard was still watching him carefully. The rifle was still in the ready position. But something else was happening too. Other guards were moving. Marcus could see 2 more red-coated soldiers walking quickly toward their location. They moved with purpose and authority, like real soldiers instead of tourist attractions. Then Marcus noticed men in regular clothes also moving toward them. These men were wearing dark suits and had serious expressions on their faces. They walked like police officers or security guards. Marcus realized with growing fear that these were probably palace security officers. "Oh no," Marcus whispered to his friends. "I think I'm in trouble." One of the men in suits was speaking into a small radio. Marcus could not hear what he was saying, but it was clear that he was calling for backup or reporting the incident. The crowd of tourists was getting nervous. Some people were leaving the area quickly, not wanting to be involved in whatever was happening. Others stayed to watch, but they kept their distance. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. What had started as harmless fun was turning into something very serious. He had never meant for this to happen. He just wanted to see if he could make the guard smile or move a little bit. Now the guard was not only moving, but he was also treating Marcus like a real threat. "Maybe we should leave," Dave suggested quietly. but it was too late for that. One of the security officers was walking directly toward Marcus. The man was tall and looked very official. He had a badge on his jacket and a radio in his hand. "Excuse me, sir," the security officer said to Marcus. "I need to speak with you." Marcus's mouth was dry. He tried to swallow, but it was difficult. "What about?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "You touched the guard's weapon," the officer said. "That's a serious offense." Marcus looked around at his friends. They all looked worried and scared. This was not how their fun day in London was supposed to go. "I didn't know," Marcus said weakly. "I thought it was just for show." The security officer did not look sympathetic. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning." Marcus felt his world spinning. Questioning? This sounded like he was being arrested. Corporal Mitchell was still standing in his alert position, watching everything that was happening. But gradually he began to return to his normal guard stance. The immediate threat was over, and security was handling the situation. However, the damage was done. What Marcus had thought was just harmless tourist fun had become a serious security incident, and now he was going to have to face the consequences of his actions. Marcus looked at the beautiful palace behind the guards. He had come to London to have fun and see the sights. Instead, he had created an international incident on his first day in the city. His friends watched helplessly as the security officer began to escort Marcus away from the crowd. The fun day they had planned was over before it had really begun. The security officer placed his hand gently but firmly on Marcus's arm. "Sir, please come with me," he said in a calm but serious voice. Marcus looked back at his friends from the Iron Eagles. They stood frozen by their motorcycles, not knowing what to do. Their exciting trip to London had suddenly become a nightmare. "Can my friends come with me?" Marcus asked the officer. "They can follow us, but they cannot be part of the questioning," the officer replied. "This involves only you." As they walked away from the crowd, Marcus could hear people talking about what had just happened. Some tourists were still taking pictures and videos. He realized that his mistake was probably already being shared on social media around the world. The security officer led Marcus toward a small building near the palace gates. It looked like an office or security station. 2 more officers joined them as they walked. Marcus's legs felt heavy with each step. He kept thinking about what he had done wrong. All he wanted was to have some fun and maybe make the guards smile. He never imagined that touching the rifle would cause such a big reaction. "I really didn't mean any harm," Marcus said to the officer walking beside him. "I understand," the officer replied, "but you need to understand how serious this situation is." They reached the security building and the officer opened the door. Inside, it looked like a police station. There were desks, computers, and chairs. Several other security officers were working at their desks. "Please sit here," the officer said, pointing to a chair next to a desk. Marcus sat down. His hands were still shaking a little bit. He had never been in trouble with the law before. The most serious thing he had ever done was get a speeding ticket on his motorcycle. The officer sat down across from Marcus and pulled out a notebook. "What's your name?" the officer asked. "Marcus Thompson," Marcus replied. "Where are you from?" "Manchester." "Are you visiting London as a tourist?" "Yes, sir. This is my first time here." The officer wrote down all of Marcus's answers. Then he looked up with a serious expression. "Mr. Thompson, do you understand what you did wrong?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I touched the guard's rifle, but I didn't think it was real." The officer nodded. "The rifles carried by the Queen's Guard are very real, Mr. Thompson. These men are active duty soldiers in the British Army. They are not actors or performers. They have a serious job to do." Marcus felt embarrassed. "I thought they were just there for tourists to look at." "That's a common mistake," the officer said. "But it's a dangerous one. The Queen's Guard are responsible for protecting the royal family and royal properties. When someone tries to touch their weapon, they must assume it could be an attack." Marcus's stomach dropped. "An attack? But I was just playing around." "The guards don't know that," the officer explained. "They have to treat every threat as if it's real. That's why Corporal Mitchell reacted the way he did." For the first time, Marcus learned the guard's name. Corporal Mitchell. He was a real person with a real name, not just a tourist attraction. "Is Corporal Mitchell okay?" Marcus asked. The officer looked surprised by the question. "He's fine. He did exactly what he was trained to do." "The question is what we're going to do with you." Marcus swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "Interfering with the Queen's Guard is a serious offense, Mr. Thompson. You could be charged with a crime." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the stomach. A crime? He had never committed a crime in his life. He worked hard, paid his taxes, and tried to be a good person. "What kind of crime?" Marcus asked quietly. "Interfering with official duties, possibly assault on a military officer," the officer said. "These charges could result in fines or even jail time." Marcus felt like he was going to be sick. "Jail time? For touching a rifle that he thought was fake?" "I had no idea," Marcus said. "If I had known it was real, I never would have touched it." "That's what everyone says," the officer replied. "But ignorance of the law is not an excuse." Just then, another officer entered the room. He was older and wore a uniform with more badges and stripes. He looked like he was in charge. "How are we doing here?" the senior officer asked. "Mr. Thompson has been cooperative," the first officer said. "He claims he didn't know the rifle was real." The senior officer looked at Marcus with sharp eyes. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Chief Inspector Williams. I'm in charge of Palace Security." Marcus stood up quickly. "Nice to meet you, sir." "Sit down," Chief Inspector Williams said. It was clearly an order, not a suggestion. Marcus sat back down. "Mr. Thompson, in my 20 years of protecting this palace, I've seen many tourists make mistakes, but what you did today was particularly reckless." Marcus felt shame burning in his cheeks. "I'm sorry, sir. I really am." "Sorry doesn't undo what happened," the chief inspector said. "Your actions created a security incident. We had to respond as if there was a real threat to the palace and the royal family." Marcus had not thought about the royal family. He realized that somewhere inside that beautiful palace, there might be members of the royal family who had to worry about their safety because of what he did. "I never thought about that," Marcus said honestly. "That's the problem," Chief Inspector Williams said. "You didn't think. You treated our security like it was a game." The chief inspector walked around the room as he spoke. Marcus could tell that this man was very serious about his job. "Do you know how many real threats we deal with every year?" the chief inspector asked. Marcus shook his head. "Dozens. People who actually want to hurt the royal family or damage the palace. When someone like you comes along and treats our guards like entertainment, it makes our job much harder." Marcus was beginning to understand how serious his mistake really was. This was not just about him having fun, it was about the safety of very important people. "Sir, is there anything I can do to make this right?" Marcus asked. Chief Inspector Williams stopped walking and looked directly at Marcus. "That depends on several things, Mr. Thompson. First, we need to complete our investigation. We need to review the security cameras and interview witnesses." Marcus's heart sank. Security cameras. That meant there was video evidence of everything he had done. "Second," the chief inspector continued, "we need to determine if you pose any ongoing threat." "I don't," Marcus said quickly. "I swear I don't. I just made a stupid mistake." "We'll determine that," the chief inspector said coldly. Outside the security building, Marcus's friends were waiting and worrying. They had followed Marcus as far as they were allowed, but now they could only stand outside and hope for the best. Tommy was pacing back and forth. "I can't believe this is happening." "We should have stopped him," Steve said. "We knew he was going too far. How could we have known it would turn into this?" Jake asked. Dave was looking at his phone. "Guys, this is getting worse." "And what do you mean?" Tommy asked. "Look at this," Dave said, showing them his phone screen. Someone posted a video of what happened. It already has thousands of views. The Iron Eagles looked at the video with horror. There was their friend Marcus reaching out to touch the guard's rifle. Then there was the guard's explosive reaction, and Marcus jumping backward in fear. The comments under the video were not kind. People were calling Marcus stupid, disrespectful, and worse. "This is going to follow him forever," Steve said sadly. Inside the security building, Marcus had no idea that his mistake was already spreading across the internet. He was focused on trying to convince Chief Inspector Williams that he was not a dangerous person. But the chief inspector was not easily convinced. In his experience, people who disrespected the Queen's Guard often had other problems with authority and respect. Marcus was learning that actions have consequences, and some consequences are much more serious than others. Chief Inspector Williams left the room to speak with other officers. Marcus was left alone with the first security officer, who continued asking questions and writing down answers. "Have you ever been arrested before?" the officer asked. "No, never," Marcus replied. "Do you have any military experience?" "No." "Have you ever handled firearms?" "No." I've never even seen a real gun before today." The officer made more notes in his notebook. Marcus watched him write and wondered what would happen next. He felt like he was in a movie, but this was real life and the consequences were real too. After about 30 minutes, Chief Inspector Williams returned with another man in a suit. This new person looked very official and carried a briefcase. "Mr. Thompson," Chief Inspector Williams said, "this is Mr. Patterson from the Crown Prosecution Service. He's here to determine if criminal charges should be filed against you." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Criminal charges. This was really happening. Mr. Patterson sat down and opened his briefcase. He pulled out several documents and a tablet computer. "Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the incident report and watched the security camera footage." Mr. Patterson said, "What you did today was serious enough to warrant criminal prosecution." "What does that mean exactly?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It means you could be charged with interfering with official duties and assault on a military officer," Mr. Patterson explained. "If convicted, you could face up to 6 months in prison and a significant fine." Marcus felt dizzy. 6 months in prison? For touching what he thought was a fake rifle? "However," Mr. Patterson continued, "there are several factors that might work in your favor." Marcus looked up hopefully. "First, you have no criminal record. Second, you were cooperative when detained. Third, you appear to genuinely not have understood the seriousness of your actions." "I really didn't understand," Marcus said quickly. "I would never have done it if I had known." Mr. Patterson nodded. "I believe that. But the law doesn't excuse ignorance, Mr. Thompson. You're responsible for your actions regardless of your intentions." Chief Inspector Williams spoke up. "There's also the matter of the public disruption you caused. Your behavior drew a large crowd and interfered with normal palace operations." Marcus remembered the crowd of tourists who had gathered to watch him. At the time, he thought they were enjoying themselves. Now he realized he had been causing problems for the palace staff and security team. "I'm sorry about that too," Marcus said. "I didn't think about how it might affect other people." "That's part of the problem," Chief Inspector Williams said. "You didn't think about the consequences of your actions." Mr. Patterson looked at his tablet and then at Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to make you an offer. If you accept responsibility for your actions and agree to certain conditions, we can avoid criminal prosecution." Marcus sat up straighter. "What kind of conditions?" "First, you would be banned from all royal properties for 1 year. That includes Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, and any other royal residence." Marcus nodded quickly. "Okay. Second, you would pay a fine of £500. Marcus winced. That was a lot of money for someone who worked at a car repair shop, but it was better than going to prison. Third, you would complete 20 hours of community service related to respecting cultural institutions." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "You would volunteer at museums or historic sites helping to educate people about appropriate behavior," Mr. Patterson explained. Marcus thought about it. It sounded embarrassing, but it was definitely better than criminal charges. "And fourth," Mr. Patterson continued, "you would write a formal apology to Corporal Mitchell and the Queen's Guard Regiment." "I'd be happy to do that," Marcus said immediately. "I really want to apologize to him." Mr. Patterson closed his tablet. "Do you accept these terms, Mr. Thompson?" "Yes, sir. I accept them all. Very well. We'll prepare the paperwork." As Mr. Patterson worked on his documents, Chief Inspector Williams spoke to Marcus again. "Mr. Thompson, I want you to understand something. The men and women who serve as Queen's Guard are among the finest soldiers in the British Army. They've often served in combat zones, protecting their fellow soldiers and their country." Marcus listened carefully. "Corporal Mitchell, the guard you bothered today, served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He's seen real combat and real danger. When you treated him like entertainment, you disrespected not just him, but all the soldiers who serve with honor." Marcus felt ashamed. He had never thought about the guard as a real person with a real military background. He had only seen the fancy uniform and thought it was all for show. "I understand now," Marcus said. "I was completely wrong." "I hope you do understand," Chief Inspector Williams said, "because this incident will stay on your record. If you ever cause trouble at any royal property again, you'll face the full consequences of the law." While Marcus was dealing with the legal consequences of his actions, his friends were still waiting outside the security building. They had been there for over 2 hours now, and they were getting very worried. Tommy's phone rang. It was his girlfriend back in Manchester. "Tommy, what's going on?" she asked as soon as he answered. "I just saw a video of Marcus on Facebook. It says he got arrested at Buckingham Palace." Tommy looked at his friends with alarm. "It's already on Facebook?" "Not just Facebook," his girlfriend said. "It's on Twitter and Instagram too. Everyone's talking about it." Tommy hung up and told the others what his girlfriend had said. "This is really bad," Dave said. "Marcus is going to be famous for all the wrong reasons." Steve was looking at his own phone. "Look at this," he said, showing them a news website. Local news station back home already picked up the story. The headline says, "Manchester man causes security incident at Buckingham Palace." Jake shook his head. "His boss is going to see this. His family is going to see this. Everyone back home is going to know what happened." The Iron Eagles realized that Marcus's problems were just beginning. Even if he avoided criminal charges, the embarrassment and shame of what he had done would follow him for a long time. Inside the security building, Marcus was finally finished with all the paperwork and questioning. Mr. Patterson had prepared the legal documents for him to sign, accepting the plea agreement. "Sign here, Mr. Thompson," Mr. Patterson said, pointing to a line at the bottom of the page. Marcus signed his name, officially accepting responsibility for his actions and agreeing to the punishment. "You're free to go," Chief Inspector Williams said. "But remember, you're banned from all royal properties for 1 year. If we see you here again during that time, you'll be arrested immediately." Marcus stood up. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I won't waste it." As Marcus walked toward the door, Chief Inspector Williams called out to him. "Mr. Thompson?" Marcus turned around. "I hope you learned something today." "I did, sir. I really did." Marcus opened the door and stepped outside. His friends rushed over to him immediately. "Marcus! Are you okay?" Tommy asked. "What happened?" Steve demanded. Marcus looked at his friends and realized he had a lot of explaining to do. But first he had to deal with the fact that his mistake was now public knowledge. "Guys," Marcus said slowly, "I think we need to go home." The ride back to Manchester was very different from the exciting trip to London that morning. Marcus and his friends rode their motorcycles in silence for most of the 4-hour journey. The fun and adventure they had planned was completely ruined. Marcus kept thinking about everything that had happened. In just one day, he had gone from an ordinary guy having fun with his friends to someone who had caused an international incident. He felt embarrassed, ashamed, and worried about what would happen when he got home. When they reached Manchester, it was already dark. The Iron Eagles said goodbye to each other in the parking lot where they usually met. But it was not like their normal cheerful goodbyes after a good day of riding. "Marcus, call us tomorrow, okay?" Tommy said. "We'll figure out how to deal with this." "Yeah, we're still your friends," Steve added. "We'll get through this together." Marcus nodded, but he felt very alone. He rode his Harley-Davidson home to his small apartment, parked it, and went inside. The first thing Marcus did was check his phone. He had dozens of missed calls and text messages. Many were from friends and family who had seen the news or the videos online. Some were from people he barely knew who had heard about what happened. His mother had called 6 times. His boss from the car repair shop had called twice. Even his ex-girlfriend from 2 years ago had sent a text message asking if he was okay. Marcus decided to call his mother first. "Marcus," she said as soon as she answered. "I've been so worried. I saw it on the news. Are you in jail?" "No, Mom, I'm home," Marcus said. "I'm okay." "What were you thinking?" his mother asked. "How could you do something so foolish?" Marcus spent 20 minutes explaining everything to his mother. She was disappointed and worried, but she was also relieved that he was not going to prison. "You're going to have to be very careful now," she told him. "This kind of thing can affect your job, your relationships, everything." After talking to his mother, Marcus called his boss. "Marcus, I need to see you first thing Monday morning," his boss said. "This is not the kind of publicity our shop needs." Marcus's heart sank. "He might lose his job over this, I understand, sir. I'll be there." Over the next few days, Marcus learned how hard it was to live with the consequences of a public mistake. The videos of his incident at Buckingham Palace had been viewed millions of times. News websites had picked up the story. Social media was full of comments about what he had done. Most of the comments were not kind. People called him disrespectful, ignorant, and stupid. Some said he should have been arrested. Others made jokes about him. Marcus tried to avoid looking at the comments, but it was impossible. Every time he went online, he saw his face and his mistake. On Monday morning, Marcus went to work at the car repair shop. His boss, Mr. Wilson, was waiting for him in the office. "Sit down, Marcus," Mr. Wilson said. Marcus sat down and prepared for the worst. "I've been thinking about this all weekend," Mr. Wilson said. "What you did in London was embarrassing for you and for this business." "I know, sir. I'm sorry. However," Mr. Wilson continued, "you've been a good employee for 3 years. You work hard, you're honest, and you're good with customers." Marcus looked up hopefully. "I'm not going to fire you," Mr. Wilson said, "but I'm going to give you some extra responsibilities." "What kind of responsibilities?" "You're going to help me teach our younger employees about representing our business properly. You're going to share your story with them and explain why it's important to think before you act." Marcus was surprised. "You want me to tell them about what happened?" "Yes, I think your experience could help prevent other young people from making similar mistakes." Marcus realized that Mr. Wilson was giving him a chance to turn his mistake into something positive. Over the next few weeks, Marcus had to complete his community service as part of his plea agreement. He was assigned to work at the Manchester Museum, helping with tours and educational programs. At first, Marcus felt embarrassed about having to do community service. But as he worked with the museum staff, he learned a lot about history, culture, and the importance of respecting institutions and traditions. The museum director, Mrs. Jenkins, was a kind woman who understood that Marcus was trying to make up for his mistake. "Marcus," she said one day, "I want you to help me with a special project." "What kind of project?" "We're creating an educational program about appropriate behavior at historic sites and cultural institutions. I think your experience could be valuable." Mrs. Jenkins explained that many tourists, especially young people, sometimes behaved inappropriately at museums, historic sites, and monuments. They often did not understand the significance of these places or the importance of showing respect. "Would you be willing to share your story with school groups?" Mrs. Jenkins asked. "Not to embarrass you, but to help young people understand the consequences of disrespectful behavior." Marcus thought about it. It would be embarrassing to talk about his mistake over and over again, but it might also help prevent other people from making the same error. "Yes," Marcus said, "I'll do it." As part of his plea agreement, Marcus also had to write a formal apology to Corporal Mitchell in the Queen's Guard Regiment. This was one of the hardest things he had ever had to do. Marcus spent hours thinking about what to write. He wanted to express how sorry he was, but he also wanted Corporal Mitchell to understand that he had learned from his mistake. Finally, Marcus wrote a letter that came from his heart. "Dear Corporal Mitchell and members of the Queen's Guard, I am writing to apologize for my disrespectful behavior at Buckingham Palace. I now understand that what I did was not harmless fun, but a serious interference with your important duties. I have learned that you are not entertainers or tourist attractions, but highly trained soldiers who serve your country with honor. I should have recognized this and treated you with the respect you deserve. I am especially sorry to Corporal Mitchell, who had to deal with my inappropriate behavior while doing his job. I now know about your military service and the sacrifices you have made for your country. I deeply regret treating you like entertainment. I promise that I will never repeat this kind of behavior. I am working to educate other young people about the importance of respecting cultural institutions and the people who serve them. Thank you for your service to your country and for protecting important places like Buckingham Palace. Sincerely, Marcus Thompson." After Marcus sent the letter, he felt a little better. He could not undo what he had done, but he could try to make sure that good things came from his mistake. 3 months after the incident, Marcus was asked to speak to a group of motorcycle clubs about his experience. At first, he was nervous about facing other bikers who might judge him for his mistake. But when Marcus told his story to the group, something unexpected happened. Instead of laughing at him or judging him, the other bikers listened carefully. Many of them said they had done similar things in the past, though not as serious as what Marcus had done. "The thing is," Marcus told the group, "I thought I was just having fun. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about how my actions affected other people." An older biker in the audience raised his hand. "So what did you learn from all this?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I learned that respect isn't just a word. It's something you have to show through your actions. I learned that other people's jobs and traditions matter. even if I don't understand them. And I learned that when you make a mistake, the best thing you can do is take responsibility and try to help others learn from it. The room was quiet for a moment. Then the older biker started clapping, and soon the whole room was applauding. After the meeting, several younger bikers came up to Marcus to thank him for sharing his story. "Man, I probably would have done the same thing," one of them said. "Thanks for helping me think twice about it." Marcus realized that his embarrassing mistake was becoming something positive. He was helping other people avoid making the same error in judgment that he had made. 1 year after the incident at Buckingham Palace, Marcus received an unexpected letter in the mail. The return address showed it was from the palace security office. Marcus's heart started beating fast as he opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter stating that his 1-year ban from royal properties had expired. He was now legally allowed to visit Buckingham Palace and other royal sites again. But along with the official notice was something else that surprised him. There was a handwritten note from Chief Inspector Williams. "Mr. Thompson, your year of community service and educational work has been noted by our office. We understand you have been speaking to young people about respecting cultural institutions. This is commendable. Should you choose to visit royal properties again, we trust you will do so with the respect and understanding you have gained. C.I. Williams." Marcus read the note several times. He had not expected any recognition for the work he had been doing. He had been speaking to school groups, motorcycle clubs, and community organizations about his experience for months now. It had become an important part of his life. The educational program at the Manchester Museum had grown significantly with Marcus's help. Mrs. Jenkins had made him a permanent volunteer coordinator, and he now helped train other young people who needed to complete community service. "Marcus," Mrs. Jenkins said one day, "I have something to tell you." They were in her office after a successful presentation to a group of high school students. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "The British Museum in London has heard about our educational program. They want you to come and help them start a similar program there." Marcus was shocked. "The British Museum wants me to help them?" "Yes. They've been having problems with tourists and young visitors who don't understand appropriate behavior. They think your story and experience could really help." Marcus thought about this opportunity. It would mean going back to London, the city where he had made his biggest mistake. But it would also mean using that mistake to help other people. "I'd like to do it," Marcus said. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself back in London. But this time, he was there as an invited speaker and educational consultant, not as a troublemaking tourist. The British Museum was even more impressive than Buckingham Palace. It was full of ancient artifacts and priceless historical items from around the world. Marcus walked through the halls with Dr. Sarah Ahmed, the museum's education director. "We have problems with people touching artifacts, taking inappropriate photos, and generally not understanding how to behave in a museum setting," Dr. Ahmed explained. "Your story resonates with people because you're honest about your mistake and the consequences." Marcus nodded. "I think many people just don't think about the significance of these places and objects." "Exactly. When you tell your story, it helps people understand that their actions have real consequences." That afternoon, Marcus spoke to a group of college students who were visiting the museum. He told them about his experience at Buckingham Palace and what he had learned from it. "The thing that surprises people most," Marcus said, "is that I'm not angry about what happened to me. Yes, it was embarrassing and it caused me problems, but it also taught me important lessons that I needed to learn." A student raised her hand. "What was the most important lesson?" "That other people's work and traditions deserve respect, even if I don't understand them or think they're important," Marcus replied. "Corporal Mitchell wasn't just standing there for my entertainment. He was doing a serious job that required skill, training, and dedication." Another student asked, "Do you regret going to London that day?" Marcus thought about this question carefully. "I regret my behavior that day. But I don't regret going to London. If I hadn't made that mistake, I never would have learned these lessons, and I never would have been able to help other people learn from my experience." After his presentation at the British Museum, Marcus decided to do something he had been thinking about for months. He wanted to return to Buckingham Palace. Marcus took the underground to the palace just like any other tourist. But as he approached the familiar gates, he felt very different from the last time he had been there. The same red-coated guards were standing at their posts. They looked just as professional and serious as Marcus remembered. But now he saw them differently. Instead of seeing tourist attractions, he saw dedicated soldiers doing an important job. Marcus stood at a respectful distance and watched the changing of the guard ceremony. He noticed how precisely the soldiers moved and how seriously they took their duties. He felt proud to watch them rather than wanting to disturb them. After the ceremony, Marcus walked over to the area where his incident had occurred 1 year earlier. A different guard was now stationed there, but the post looked exactly the same. Marcus stood quietly for a few minutes, remembering what had happened and thinking about how much he had changed since then. "Excuse me?" said a voice behind him. Marcus turned around and saw a palace security officer approaching. For a moment, Marcus felt nervous, wondering if he was in trouble again. "Are you Marcus Thompson?" the officer asked. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. "I'm Officer Davis," Chief Inspector Williams asked me to give you this if I saw you." The officer handed Marcus a small envelope. Marcus opened it and found another handwritten note from Chief Inspector Williams. "Mr. Thompson, Corporal Mitchell asked me to pass along his thanks for your letter of apology and for the work you've been doing to educate young people. He was genuinely moved by your efforts to turn a negative situation into something positive. He wanted you to know that your apology was accepted and that he respects the person you have become." C.I. Williams. Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. He had hoped that his apology letter would be received well, but he never expected such a generous response. "Thank you," Marcus said to Officer Davis. "The Chief Inspector also wanted me to tell you that if you're ever interested in speaking to our security staff about tourist behavior, you'd be welcome to do so." Marcus was amazed. The people he had wronged were now inviting him to help them with their work. As Marcus walked away from Buckingham Palace that day, he reflected on the incredible journey of the past year. His moment of poor judgment had led to embarrassment, legal consequences, and public shame. But it had also led to personal growth, meaningful work, and the opportunity to help others. Marcus's story had spread far beyond London and Manchester. He had been featured in articles about learning from mistakes and taking responsibility for one's actions. He had spoken to thousands of young people about respect, consequences, and personal growth. The Iron Eagles Motorcycle Club was proud of how Marcus had handled his situation. Instead of feeling sorry for himself or making excuses, he had taken full responsibility and worked to make something positive come from his mistake. "You know what I respect most about you?" Tommy said one day as they were working on their motorcycles. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "You could have just paid your fine, done your community service quietly, and tried to forget the whole thing. But instead, you decided to help other people learn from what you went through." Marcus smiled. "I think that's the only way to really make up for a mistake like that. You have to turn it into something that helps others." 5 years later, Marcus had become a well-known speaker on topics of respect, responsibility, and learning from mistakes. He had spoken at schools, museums, military bases, and community organizations across the United Kingdom. He still worked at the car repair shop in Manchester, but he also ran educational workshops in his spare time. He had written a small book about his experience called The Day I Learned Respect, which was used in schools to teach young people about appropriate behavior and taking responsibility for their actions. Marcus never returned to Buckingham Palace to test another guard's patience, but he did return many times as a respectful visitor who appreciated the history, tradition, and dedication of the people who worked there. The young man who had once seen the royal guards as entertainment had become someone who understood the true meaning of service, respect, and honor. And through sharing his story, he had helped thousands of other people understand these important values too. Marcus's mistake at Buckingham Palace had lasted only a few minutes, but the lessons he learned from it and the good work that came from it lasted for the rest of his life.